Do you need this here?
No, you need to click on it, please. Thank you.
What a great kavod it is for me to be invited here to speak on behalf of this amazing organization, the Ohel Sara, a main group, an organization that has become synonymous with mitzvahs, masim tovim, what the Aseres Yemei Teshuva is all about. Thank you to Rabbi Fuchs for inviting me, for giving me the zchus to speak here during the Aseres Yemei Teshuva. Special yashar koach to the Martin family for opening up their home to this wonderful organization. May the Rabbi Shalom bless this home and all those who are involved in the Ohel Sara main group with the year Shnas Chaim v'Shalom Lanu L'Chol Yisrael. Amen. Amen. You're a good audience so far.
Hold the microphones if possible.
Hold it? I'm good. Okay. You're probably thinking you called me in to speak and I'm some kind of acclaimed speaker with great experience. And I must confess, this is the very first time that I'm speaking for women. So if my mother asks how it went, you just tell her it was great. It has been said that Yom Kippur is like visiting day. But it's not our children that we're visiting. We're not visiting our cousins. We're not visiting our parents. Yom Kippur is a day that you visit yourself. And for many of us, it is a visit that we have not taken in a very long time. Because if you think about it, how much time do we spend with ourselves? Think about it. You wake up in the morning, you get up, you daven, housework, you go to work, you're preoccupied, you're busy. By the time you hit the sack, you haven't spent even one moment of time thinking about yourself. And the days pass, and the weeks pass, and the months pass, and you may have gone the whole year with many mitzvahs, many masim tovim, but have we stopped for one moment to say, what am I doing? Who am I? Perhaps in the past, people would think when they would walk down the streets, people would think when they drove in the car, but now we're more sophisticated. Now we talk on the cell phones, we text, we email. Even in the car, we have the nonsensical talk shows. Toivim banu, download shiurim from the internet. Not that I have anything against people who download shiurim. But at the end of the day, we're not spending even a moment thinking about ourselves. And therefore on Yom Kippur, we're going to say, Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Daniel. How you doing? Was machst du? How have you been this year? This is what Yom Kippur is, a visit with oneself. Reb Shamson Raphael Hirsch makes a very keen observation. According to all halachic authorities, the main mitzvah of Yom Kippur is the mitzvah of vidoy, the mitzvah of confession, lehisvadois. How do you articulate confession b'lashon hakodesh? There's only one way to do it, lehisvadois. And if you know anything about Hebrew, if you know anything about the Hebrew language, you know that the word lehisvadois is what we call binyan hispael. It's the reflexive conjunction. There's no other way to say it. The only way to say vidoy is reflexive. You know why? Because you're saying vidoy in front of the Ribono Shel Olam. But to who are you confessing? You're not confessing to God. God knows what you did. You're confessing to yourself. Yom Kippur is the day we need to take a good look at ourselves in the proverbial mirror. So you say, what's the problem? Looking good today. Have a nice tie. Looking good. Not that mirror. Not the mirror that says, yeah, I'm pretty good. I daven, I learn, I do chesed. Not the mirror that says, yeah, I'm a good family person, I'm sensitive. Wrong mirror. Not the mirror on the outside of the medicine cabinet. The mirror on the inside of the medicine cabinet. The mirror that allows you to see all the flaws, all the imperfections. It shows you that not everything is as rosy as you think. Not everything is the way it appears superficially. We need to ask ourselves some very basic questions. The Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, wrote a small compendium called the Derech Eitz Chaim. And in the Derech Eitz Chaim, the Ramchal gives for us a long list of questions that we need to ask ourselves every single day. Says the Ramchal, these questions are not just nice things to think about. They're not just good things to think about. If you don't think about these questions, says the Ramchal, Ha'adam she'enoi choshev al zeh, if a person doesn't think about these things, kashe loi me'oid me'oid lahagia el hashlemus, they will not fulfill their purpose in this world. Says the Ramchal, and if you think about these questions, v'ha'adam ha'choshev al zeh, karov eleha me'oid, if you think about these things, you will fulfill your purpose in this world. In other words, what the Ramchal is saying is that if you think about the following, you'll be a successful Jew. And if you don't think about the following, you'll be a failure. So allow me to share with you the very first question that the Ramchal says that we need to think about every single day. Question number 1, Ma Hu? Who are you? Who are you? Sounds like a very simple question. I'm Daniel Glatstein. Nachamal. One more time. Who are you? Who are you? What kind of person are you? How do we measure ourselves? What is the barometer to determine where we're holding? What's the measuring stick? Yeah, I know I'm basically good, but who are you? Shlomo HaMelech tells us in Mishlei Perek Chav Zayin, Matzreif la kesef, v'kur la zahav, v'ish lefi mahalalai. You have a precious metal. How do you determine the quality of the precious metal? So you have a refining pot. You take the gold, you take the silver, you melt it down, and whatever impurities or dross rises to the top, you know exactly the content of the precious metal. Matzreif la kesef v'kur la zahav. If you want to assess the quality of a precious metal, melt it down, you'll be able to determine its quality. But how do you evaluate the quality of a person? You throw them into a melting pot. Says the pasuk, "Ve'ish lefi mahalalai," and a man according to his praise, and a woman according to her praise. Now, mahalalai doesn't just mean praise. Mahalalai means enthusiastic praise. So, for instance, what do people say about you? Do people praise you enthusiastically? People say, what does it matter what people say about me? Does it really matter what people say about me? It matters. For example, you're looking into a certain young man for the purpose of shidduchim. You call up the mashgiach. You call up the Rosh Hashiva. How do you know what the boy is all about? Very simple. Does the Rosh Hashiva gush about the boy? Does the mashgiach gush about the boy? Are people showering him with praise? If they're showering him with praise, 50-50. Maybe he's good, and maybe not. But if the Rosh Hashiva says, yeah, he's a good boy, forget it. Forget it. Don't even bother. What people say about you, that's a barometer to know what a person's quality is, says Shlomo HaMelech. Sorry, I break a lot of things during the Joshua. But this pasuk, Ve'ish lefi mahalalai, says Rabbeinu Yonah, means something else entirely. Ve'ish lefi mahalalai doesn't just mean the way people praise you. Ve'ish lefi mahalalai means, what does the person praise? What excites you? What moves you? How can we test a man? What excites him? So a young girl is dating a man. She wants to get a good idea. What is he all about? She's going to have to do something very difficult. She's going to have to keep quiet, and she's going to have to let him talk. What's he talking about? What is he talking about? What excites him? Yes, he learns in the Beis Medrash 10 hours a day. But what's he talking about when he comes out of the Beis Medrash? If he's talking about food, if he's talking about sports, if he's talking about nonsense, you know exactly who he is. And if the boy is learning an hour a day, but when he comes on the date and he's talking about his Rabbeim, and he's excited about his Shiurim, and he's excited about Ruchnius, you also know exactly who he is. Ve'ish lefi mahalalai, you are what excites you. That's who you are. You want to know who you are? What you get excited about? That's who you are. Story, 3 people come back from a Malava Malka. One of them comes back and he says, wow, the Divrei Torah was amazing. One of them says, wow, the singing, beautiful singing. The other one says, that herring, azeh geschmack herring, that herring was delicious. And in one moment, we're able to characterize all 3 participants. One of them personifies Torah, one of them personifies song, and one of them personifies herring. It's very interesting. At the end of Parshas Matos, the Torah tells us about a man, Yair ben Menashe. The Torah says, V'Yair ben Menashe halach, Yair ben Menashe went, Val Yilkod es Chavoseim, he conquered some cities, Vayikra Eshen Chavois Yair. And he called the name of the cities of Yair. Who cares? Who cares? And then the Torah goes on. V'Noivach halach, Noivach went, Vayilkod es Kenas, V'Es b'Noisah. He conquered Kenas. He conquered its tributaries. Vayikra la Noivach b'Shmai, and he called the name of the city Noivach. You got it? Yair went, he called the name of the cities Chavos Yair. Noivach went, he conquered cities, he called it Noivach. That's what you're telling me about in Aseres Yemei Teshuva? I mean, who cares about this? And then Rashi goes on to say that there's something very unusual about the word la. Normally it should say Vayikra la with a mapik hey. Vayikra la Noivach b'Shmai. And instead it just says Vayikra la. It's missing a dot. Says Rashi, I can't get over the fact that there's a missing dot. Baruch Hashem, my Rabbi Moshe Hadarshan pointed out that the reason why the word la is missing a dot is because the name of Noivach's city did not last. He called it Noivach, and then a few months later it became known as, Kitchen Sink, Idaho. It lost its name. Nobody knows the name of the city as Noivach. But Yair's name, everybody knows that the city of Yair is called Chavois Yair until today. That's why by Yair city it says Vayikra la with a dot. And by Noivach city it's Vayikra la without a dot. What's the Torah trying to teach me with all of this seemingly irrelevant and superfluous information? Says Rav Shimon Schwab, the Torah is teaching me a most profound lesson. The Torah is helping to answer the fundamental question of Ma'ani, who am I? We live in a physical world. We live in Olam Hazeh. We may drive a nice car. We may have a nice home. We may have a good job. We may wear nice clothing. But is that who we are? Is that our identity? Is that how we define ourselves? Of course not. They're just external to our identity. But we face the challenge of not letting these things define us. Person may drive a nice car, drive a Lexus, gesundheit, drive it gesundheit. But sometimes you drive a nice car, you start looking at yourself differently. I'm not just a person who happens to drive a Lexus. I'm a Lexus driving person. Do you know who you're talking to? I don't just happen to be a doctor to pay the bills. I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer. I'm an accountant. I'm a rabbi. Be careful how you speak to me. You ask a guy, what do you do for a living? I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer. Excuse me. I asked you what you do for a living and you tell me who you are? Because we live in a world where people choose to identify and define themselves with external qualities. Why would someone have an insignia on their clothing or wear a certain brand? They're advertising. I'm not just wearing nice clothing. I'm the kind of person that wears this type of clothing. They're defining their essence. They're announcing to the world what their identity is. Some people have a mezuzah on their front door. My next door neighbor has a big Yankee sticker. Why would someone plaster a Yankee sticker? My mother told me, don't talk about sports. You're talking to ladies. But I had other examples. I took them all out except for this one. Why would someone have a Yankee sticker on their front door? because they happen to watch the Yankees at night? That's why they have on their front door a Yankee sticker? No. They're advertising to the world, you know who I am? I'm a Yankee fan. That's my definition. That's my identity. Noivach made a big mistake. Noivach conquered a city. But he started to let that city define him. He started to identify by that city. You know who I am, Noivach said? I'm the person who owns the city, to the point where he called the name of the city Noivach. That type of attitude has no kiyum. It doesn't last. It ends. It ends in the grave. But Yair understood, yes, I own real estate. Yes, I own a city. But it's only Chavois Yair. It's only the city of Yair. That's not me. It's my city. It's what I happen to own. It's what Hashem happened to give to me. That type of attitude has kiyum. That type of attitude lasts. What do we personify? When people look at us, David HaMelech says, Ani, not oiseh shalom, ani shalom. I personify peace. I am peace. You know why you don't have to wear tefillin on Shabbos? Not just because Shabbos is an ice. Because when you keep Shabbos, your entire entity is transformed into a shomer Shabbos. You don't need the ice of tefillin. You become the ice. So what are we? What have we become? When people look at us, what do we personify? What do we identify ourselves as? When people see us, do they say, oh, there's the person who drives that nice car? There's the person that's always busy with their home. They have no time for anything else. There's the woman with more pairs of shoes than days of the month. Are we identified by our clothing? Are we identified by our possessions? Are we identified by our money? Who are we? What are we? Ma'ani. What really makes you happy? What makes you happy in life? What gives you joy? What are you into? What are you really into? Is the shir really what you're into? Is the davening really what you're into? Or it's just something you do? Let me tell you something. The way we live our lives here won't just affect us in this world, but it's going to affect us all the way to Olam Haba, all the way to Gan Eden. Tell you Chasidish Shemaisa. Chidushay Harim was once traveling. He was once going to visit his Rebbe, and he's traveling along the road. He's walking. His feet are getting dirty. His shoes are getting dirty. He's walking on the muddy road, and a Bala Agala, a wagon driver, drives by. He says, Rabbi, you need a ride? Chidush Harim hops into the wagon. This guy, the wagon driver, the Bal Hagala, is a prosta yid, a very coarse individual. He says, get in. He gets in. They're traveling. After 1 mile, the first horse drops dead. Okay? They're traveling another mile, and so forth. After another 4 miles, the second horse drops dead. The man is distraught. His whole parnasa, his whole everything, it's dead. Forget it. What's he going to do? The man gets out of the wagon. He puts his head in his arms. He starts crying. The man dies on the spot. Chidush Harim has a dream. And in the dream, he sees the prosta yid. He goes up to Shemayim. He didn't have one mitzvah. Hashem says, sorry, you're going to the hot place. He said, what do you mean? One time I gave a ride to the Chidush Harim. He said, you're right. You know what the man's Olam Haba was? You know what his Gan Eden was? A beautiful wagon with 2 gorgeous horses. Because that was his Olam Hazeh, so that was his Olam Haba. You make your Olam Haba right here and now. Yesh kaina olamai b'sha'achas. So what do you want your Olam Haba to be? A Lexus? An Infinity? Because you're into cars? Or maybe a new pair of shoes for every day of the month. Maybe. That's your Olam Haba. That's right. Or maybe the bathroom decorated the way you always wanted. That will be your Olam Haba. Because that's all you think about in Olam Hazeh. Maybe another championship for the New York Yankees. Okay, I had to get in again. maybe a new outfit. But everyone else is sitting, basking in the divine presence. No, but that was your Olam Hazeh, so that's your Olam Haba. If the answer to the question of Ma'ani, if your essential self is, I am Gashmius, I am Olam Hazeh, this world is what makes me happy, Gashmius makes me happy, that's what I'm into, that's what you will be into. And that's what you'll get. When I was a kid, there was a certain video game that I always wanted. Nintendo. It was a karate game. I still remember what it was called, Double Dragon. Remember it? I wanted that game really bad for Hanukkah. So I asked my parents, can you get me that game for Hanukkah? No. My parents did not like this game. They didn't think it was appropriate. They said no. I think I got over it. But imagine if at my chasana, maybe when I got smicha, imagine if my Rosh Hashiva would have sat me down. Donnie, we're really proud of you. Here, Double Dragon. It's what you always wanted. Yeah, but I've grown out of Double Dragon. Who are you? It's a very important question. Because who we are in Olam Hazeh will determine who we are in Olam Haba. And that's frightening. So how do we react to this? How do we deal with this? Okay, it's true. We look at ourselves in the mirror. We may not be so happy to see what we see. But it's not my fault, of course. I didn't make myself this way. It's my parents' fault. That's how they raised me. It's my Rebbe's fault, my teacher's fault. He never believed in me. She never believed in me. It's the principal's fault. One time in second grade, the principal gave me a bad look, and I never became who I should have. It's my husband's fault. He doesn't understand me. If only he would understand me. If only that teacher understood me. If only my parents understood me, I would have been much better. It's not my fault. Excuses. That's what Shlomo HaMelech tells us in Koheles. Ha'elokim asa es ha'adam yashar. God made man straight. V'heima bikshu cheshvonos rabim. And what we've been doing since the beginning of time is making excuses, excuses, excuses. We make excuses before we do something. We come up with terutzim, and we come up with every rationalization in the world to be able to do what we want to do. And after we do it, we come up with rationalizations and excuses to justify what we've done. It's been going on since the beginning of time. Hashem comes to Adam Arishon, Adam, do whatever you want. No Shabbos, no Tefillin, no Yom Kippur, nothing, no Sukkah, no Shiurim. You don't have to come to Shiurim. Just don't eat the fruit. Don't eat the fruit. So what does Adam Arishon do? He eats the fruit. God confronts him. Why do you eat the fruit? Says Adam Arishon, the very first excuse. The first teretz, the first rationalization, the oldest trick in the book. Ha'isha asher nasati imadi hinasna li. It's my wife's fault. Hashem comes to Chava. Why'd you do it? Not my fault. Hanacha shishiyani v'echa. The snake talked me into it. Cain kills Hevel. He gives him a whole shmooze. Vayomer Cain el Hevel achiv vayehi biyoisam basada vayakom Cain el Hevel vayargeo. Cain says to Hevel blank. Cain talks to Hevel. The Torah doesn't tell us what Cain said to Hevel, and then he kills him. What did Cain say to Hevel? Says Targum Yonasan ben Uziel on the spot. Cain said to Hevel a teretz. You know I'm going to kill you, he said. Because I'm an apikairis. First of all, less din v'less dayan. There's no judge. There's no judgment. Less oilam acharon v'less agar tav l'tzadikaya. There's no reward. There's no punishment. Nobody's looking. Nobody will know. It doesn't affect anybody. That's why I'm going to kill you. And he kills him. So why doesn't the Torah tell us what Cain said to Hevel? Vayomer Cain el Hevel. Cain said to Hevel, nobody's looking anyway. And then he killed him. Says Harari Rafal, You know why the Torah doesn't tell us what Cain said to Hevel? Because who cares what Cain said to Hevel? Of course there was an excuse. There's always an excuse. Nobody ever does anything without an excuse. And it's always absurd. It's always ludicrous. Do we really need to know the dumb excuse that Cain came up with? This excuse, that excuse. So the Torah goes out of its way to say, Cain said to Hevel, it's worthless. We don't even have to know what he said. And he killed him. Because it's always the same story. There's always an excuse. But it's not my fault. No, it's not my fault. It's someone else's fault. It's my wife's fault, my husband's fault, the snake. The snake. I called up somebody to come to Shachris. I'll be there in 3 minutes. Where were you? I'm sorry, Rabbi. I fell asleep after you spoke to me. There's always an excuse. And herein lies the single greatest impediment to tshuva. Because so long as we're going to say, yeah, I'm this, but, yeah, I'm this, but, yeah, I'm this, but it's his fault, it's her fault, it's my upbringing, it's my environment, it's my family, it's my job, it's my boss, you can't do tshuva. If you can't take responsibility for your own life, you can't do tshuva. The Gemara Masechta Avodah Zarah is a fundamental Gemara when it comes to understanding tshuva. The Gemara tells us about a man named Elazar ben Dordaya. Elazar ben Dordaya, says the Gemara, was such a big Rasha, he visited every single Zaina, every harlot in the world, until one day he found out about a certain Zaina that lived Me'ever Layam, and he crossed the 7 seas, and he paid her an exorbitant sum. And he's about to commit the act, and she looks him in the eye. He says, hey, pal, Elazar ben Dordaya in Mekablan Oisei b'tshuva, you can't do tshuva. You won't do tshuva. Somehow this hit him like a ton of bricks. It smacked him in the face. It shook him to the core. From the mouth of the Zaina, she's telling me I can't do tshuva? Look how low I've sunk. The Zaina is telling me I can't do tshuva? He's so stirred. He's so shaken. Says the Gemara, he starts to cry out, Harim ugvais bakshu alai rachamim, mountains and hills, save me. Chama ulavana, save me. And the mountains and hills said, sorry, you're on your own. Can't help you. The sun and the moon said, sorry, pal, you're on your own. Stars, help me. Sorry, can't help you. Says the Ion Yaakov. What Elazar ben Dordaya was saying, it's not my fault that I'm so bad. It's my parents. Hiram. It's my parents' fault. They sent me to the wrong school. They didn't treat me with enough respect. They didn't know how to deal with me. They weren't tolerant enough. They were too strict, too lenient. It's my parents' fault. And the parents say, sorry, you have free choice. You should have overcome it. And then Shamayim va'aretz, it's not my fault, it's my environment. It's the city I lived in. It's my friends. It's my social atmosphere. It's their fault who I am. And they said, sorry, it's your own fault. Everyone is a person unto themselves. Until Rabbi Elazar ben Dordaya comes to the inescapable conclusion, Ein hadavar taloi ela bi. It's my fault. It's up to me. Nobody else. And he does tshuva. Elazar ben Dordaya, the dreg of society, the lowest of the low, he does tshuva. Why? Because he looked himself in the mirror and he said, I am responsible for who I am. So now how do we deal with that? We look at ourselves, we understand, well, maybe, what we're really into is not really something we're so proud of. Maybe the way we really feel, maybe the things we really care about, maybe what really excites us is something we do need to improve. And it's not my fault. Now what? What do we do now? It's not my husband's fault. It's not my Rebbe's fault. It's not my rabbi's fault. It's not my parents'. So what do we do now? Most people, you know what they do? Yish. They throw in the towel. They throw in the towel. Subconsciously, we tell ourselves, we are who we are. That's the way we are. We're never going to change. That's how we were born. That's how our parents raised us. And on some level, every human being says to themselves, plateau, stagnate, just coast. You are good enough. You cannot change. The Torah tells us at the end of Parshas Shoftim, Ki seitze la'amecha ma'al. When you go out to war against your enemy, v'ra'isa sus v'rachev, you'll see horses, you'll see chariots, amrav mimcha, an army a lot greater than you, lo'isira mehem. Don't fear them. Ki Hashem elokecha imach, because Hashem is with you. Hamalcha me'eretz Mitzrayim. Okay, we all know this pasuk. You're traveling, you're in the Israeli army, you're fighting the Arabs, you see a tremendous war front, you're afraid, don't be afraid, God's on your side. Says the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, the pasuk's not just talking about a physical war. The pasuk is talking about the war that we all have with our greatest enemy, the Yetzer Hara, the Sinai. You know what the Yetzer Hara tells us? He says, you're fighting with me? You're going to overcome me? You know what he shows us? He shows us Am Rav Mimcha. He shows us that every word of Lashon Hara we ever spoke created a destructive malach. Every word of insulting words we ever spoke created a monster. That's part of the arsenal of the Yetzer Hara. Every avera we ever did created tumah, created impurity. And the Yetzer Hara comes to us with an army of destruction. And he said, you see all this tumah that you've accumulated in your lifetime? It's yours. You did it. You made it. I didn't make it. You made it. You should be ashamed of yourself. Look at all these disgusting things that you did. You did it. It's all mimcha. You did it. And he's right. We did it. So we say, forget it. We did it. That's what we've done. That's who we've become. Throw in the towel. We'll just coast along. And the Yetzer Hara has a tremendous kayach to paint everything black, everything bleak. It's impossible. It's impossible. You're not going to change. You're going to change? Last Rosh Hashanah, you told Ribbon Shalom by Tkiyah Shofar, you're going to be this big tzaddik. Are you this big tzaddik? Are you this big tzaddik? Because you're the same person you were last year. Last Yom Kippur, remember by Ne'ilah, all those commitments? You're not any different. You've been saying the same thing every single year, again and again and again and again. It's a broken record already. Yetzer Hara says, you know you're not going to change. And then you know what else the Yetzer Hara says? He says, you've changed enough. You changed last year and the year before. Now it's time to just coast along. And then the Yetzer Hara pulls out his most powerful weapon. The word that the Yetzer Hara uses to get everybody. We're not even aware of it. And not everyone's going to like to hear this. But you know what the Yetzer Hara tells us? Don't you know that you're addicted? Yeah, you're addicted. You're addicted. You're addicted to getting angry. You're addicted. It's so habitual already, you're not going to come in. You're addicted to lying. When you tell somebody, call you in 10, you know you don't mean it. When you tell someone, see you later, you don't mean it. You're just addicted. That's the way you spoke. You're addicted to it. And once you have an addiction, you're absolved. Because it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Can't help myself. I'm addicted. You're addicted to Lashon Hara. You can't stop talking about people. And there's nothing you can do about it. And the moment the word addiction has been substituted for Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Hara has gained a tremendous victory. Because there's nothing to do about it anymore. So we pick up our arms, we say, you're right, Yetzer Hara. Maybe I'll, do something little this year, but I can't really change because I am who I am, and I'll be who I am. Wake me up after Yom Kippur. Wake me up when this drasha is over. Wake me up after the Aseres Teshuva. But enough with the change. It ain't happening. When Avraham Avinu heard that his nephew Lot was captured by the 4 kings, so Avraham Avinu went to rescue his nephew, and the pasuk says, "Vayarak es chanichav yilidei beisa." You know how many people Avraham Avinu took with him? Shmoina asar v'shalosh meos. He took 318 people with him. What a big army! Says Rashi, no, he didn't. You know how many people he really took with him? One. You know what his name was? Eliezer. But the gematria of Eliezer is 318. And he really only took one, but it says 318 for this nice gematria that Eliezer is 318. I don't understand. If he only took one person, so let the Torah say he took one person with him. Why would the Torah say he took 318 people to say this cute gematria that Eliezer is 318? Just say it straight. Say he took Eliezer. I heard from Rabbi Avram Shor, Shlita, that to go and save light would be impossible. It would be impossible. For me and you to go fight the 4 kings, it's ludicrous. It's hopeless. How did Abraham do it? What gave him the courage to do it? You know what gave him the courage to do it? He had to overcome the 4-letter word, Yiyosh. Yud, Aleph, Vav, Shin. You know what that word means? Hopelessness, despair. What is the gematria of the word Yiyosh? Yud is 10. Aleph is 1. Vav is 6. Shin is 300. 317. For Avram Avinu to go attack the 4 kings, you know what he had to do? He had to overcome Yiyosh. Yiyosh is 317. Avram Avinu says, I'm going to rise above Yiyosh. I'm going to take 318. But he only took one person. He only took Eliezer. You know what the word Eliezer means? Who was Eliezer? The son of Moshe Rabbeinu was also named Eliezer. Where does that name come from? When Moshe Rabbeinu was running from Parai, and Parai took the sword and he swung it at Moshe's neck, what happened to Moshe's neck? His neck turned to marble. Moshe Rabbeinu said, Ki Elokei avi bi'ezri vayatzileni mecherav Parai. That when the Ribono Shalom is with me, anything is possible. Was there ever a time of despair? Was there ever a greater time of Yiyosh, of hopelessness, than when Moshe Rabbeinu was having his neck swung at by Parai? But he was able to run away. Why? Because he recognized Ki Elokei avi bi'ezri. When the Ribono Shalom is standing by your side, ready to help you, there's no Yiyosh, there's no hopelessness. The impossible becomes possible. So Avram Avinu says, yes, to fight the 4 kings, it's impossible. But I'm going to rise above Yiyosh. Yiyosh is 317. You know who I'm taking with me? Eliezer. God himself is going to stand by my side. He's the Melech Oizer, Ki Elokei avi bi'ezri. So the Yetzer Hara says, you think you're going to fight me? You think you're going to overcome me? It's impossible. Says the Gemara, it is impossible. It is impossible to overcome the Yetzer Hara. Me against the Yetzer Hara is a losing battle. Hashem created every person's Yetzer Hara stronger than them. But when you have Hashem on your side, you could overcome the impossible. Sometimes we lift up our arms. We say, Esoinai Elaharim, Me'ayin Yavai Ezri. We say, how's it going to happen? It seems hopeless. It seems impossible. It seems there's no way out. It seems daunting. How are we going to do it? Me'ayin. It's impossible. What's the answer to the Me'ayin Yavai Ezri? The answer is, Ezri Me'im Hashem, Oisei Shamayim Va'aretz. What did Hashem make heaven and earth out of? Me'ayin. Nothing. Nothing. In Latin, right? Ex nihilo. Yesh me'ayin. Nothing at all. And if the Ribono Shalom is able to make heaven and earth from nothing at all, he could help me me'ayin also. He could help me when it seems impossible also. Now we live in dark times. We have no Beis HaMikdash. We have no Nevi'im. We don't have Ruach HaKodesh. We don't have the Urim V'Tumim. To see Hashem clearly, very difficult. But sometimes Rebbeinu Shalom gives us a smile. He smiles at us. He lets us know that He's looking down at us. He's helping us out. I'll tell you two stories that I heard recently from Rabbi Avram Shor. It happened over the last couple of months, one in Eretz Yisrael and one in Manhattan. I'll tell you the story that happened in Manhattan first. There was a Yid, a Frum Yid. He was sentenced to a very bad sentence. Sentenced to Rikers Island. Nobody should have to know of such a thing. It's not a good place to be. Not in Ruchnius, not in Gashmius, not physically, not emotionally, not spiritually. It's Gehenna on this world. Okay? Some Askanim were involved to try to get the guy out, to try to remove him from this predicament. Everything failed. The judge had made up his mind. There was one figure, one political figure who was often very influential in these type of situations. They tried the connection. He said, there's nothing to do in this situation. The judge made up his mind. So what did the Rebbeinu Shalom do? Listen to this. It's out of this world. The guy, this political figure, a relative of his, passed away in North Carolina. He goes to North Carolina. He comes back. He's dropped off at Penn Station, 4 blocks from his apartment. It's the middle of the summer, sweltering heat. He's standing there with his suitcases. Taxis are coming by, passing by, passing by. Nothing. Nobody's stopping. Doesn't know what to do. Out of the blue, 2 yeshiva bachram, 15 and a half years old. They see the guy. He's standing there, sweating, sweltering. So what do you need? Packages. We'll do it for you, no problem. They carry his packages 3 blocks, 4 blocks to his home. Thank you so much. It's really kind of you. What floor do you live on? I live on the 3rd floor. We'll help you up. So they carry the packages up to the 3rd floor. He comes, takes out his wallet. He pulls out a 20 for each. No, we don't take money. We just wanted to do a good deed. The man is so overwhelmed. He goes to the phone. He picks up the phone. He calls a lawyer. He says, tomorrow your client is out of Rikers Island. I never knew what Orthodox Jews were like. I didn't know their kindness. I mean, it's mind-boggling. For 2 15-and-a-half yeshiva bachrim in the middle of the summer, Penn Station, when it's Elokei Avi Biezri, Vayatzi Leini Mecharav Parei. Anything's possible. 2 months ago in Eretz Yisrael, there was an Avrech, a Koilo man. He's bitten by a poisonous snake. He's taken to a specialist in Ramat Gan. He's treated for the snake bite. He calls the doctor in 10 days. The doctor says, I want you to know, never in my life have I been a mammon. I never believed in God until today. Sir, you had an illness. You had a sickness. You had sirtan. You had a growth in your kidneys. The poison of the snake cured you. 2 stories in the last couple of months. The Rebbeinu Shalom is telling us, Ki Elokei Avi Bi'azri. I'm standing there. I can help you out of any mess. Rabbi Shmulevitz, 74-year-old Rosh Yeshiva of the Mir Yeshiva. A few years ago, he gradually began to lose motor ability. He became dependent on others to walk. He lost the ability to speak. He couldn't breathe. His Talmidim couldn't understand him. 2010, he goes to Minnesota. The Mayo Clinic, they give him the most horrifying report. The Rosh Yeshiva was suffering from ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. It's a death sentence. It's a death sentence. The American and Israeli doctors both agreed there's only one hope. It's not even a hope. Experimental stem cell treatment. Did it ever work before? No, never worked before. Rabbi Shmulevitz was approved for the treatment, not because it would work, but as a compassionate experimentation. A few days after the treatment, the Rosh Yeshiva's life changed. He began to speak. He began to breathe. He suddenly stood up out of his chair. He walked to the Mir Yeshiva and he gave shir like he always did. It was the first time on planet Earth that anyone had ever regained lost motor abilities. Maybe you have an updated report on how the Rosh Yeshiva is doing now. That was as of last year. We're all here right now. Let's talk about Abraham and Sara. Abraham and Sara, right? It was highly improbable that they would have a child, right? It was very unlikely. No, it wasn't very unlikely. It was impossible. Sara was not infertile. People make a mistake. Sara was an akara. No, she wasn't an akara. She was an ailanus, the Gemara says. She had no uterus. She had no rechem. It wasn't unlikely for her to have a child. It was absolutely impossible. Not 1%. Not 0. Impossible. And look, we're all here. You know what that means? That means the national fabric of Klal Yisrael is above impossible, is above Yush. The miracle doesn't always happen. But there's no Yush. Nothing's impossible. Nothing is hopeless. This past summer, I had the zchus to visit my grandfather together with my brother Ari, my children, so Gesundsein, my brother's children. My grandfather saw, Kanai Nahara, all the great-grandchildren. He was overcome with tremendous emotion. He had not seen all the grandchildren together at one time before, like this. And the following came to his mind. He remembers 60 years ago in the death camps in Auschwitz, when they were carrying in on the first day they opened the death camp, all the old people into the death camps. And they were throwing them in. And they were crying, they were screaming out, who's going to say Kaddish for us? Who's going to say Kaddish for us? And my grandfather made up that from that day on, he risked his life to make minyanim in the death camps to say Kaddish for those people. But you know what else was running through his mind? He was a young man at the time. He wasn't married. Who's going to say Kaddish for him? And now he sees Kanai Nahara, great-grandchildren, 70 years later. Yush is not part of the national makeup of Klal Yisrael. Because when it's Elekei Avi B'Ezri, when you have Eliezer, Yush is 317. But when you have the help of the Ribbono Shel Olam, there is no Yush. So when a person wants to do tshuva, the Yetzer Hara says, you're not going to do tshuva. You remember what you did that night? You remember what you said last week? Remember what you did 3 weeks ago? You remember what you do every single day, and no matter how hard you try to stop, you can't do it? You're not going to do it. It's impossible. Don't even bother. He shows you the Amrav and he says, Mimcha, you've done it to yourself. But we tell the Yetzer Hara, Lo Yisira Mehem. We're not afraid of you. Because you're right, we can't do it. But we have someone with us that's going to help us do it. Ki Hashem Elokecha imach hamalcha me'eretz Mitzrayim. Remember where we were in Mitzrayim, on the Mem Tesh Sharei Tumah. We were serving idols. We were on the lowest level any human being was ever on. And the Ribbono Shel Olam schlepped us up from that matzav. And just like the Ribbono Shel Olam took us out from that situation, the Ribbono Shel Olam could take us out from our mess also. The Navi tells us, Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha. Ki chashalta ba'avaynecha. The Yetzer Hara says, it's who you are. You're a sinner. You're a Baal Lashon Hara. You're a Kasan. You're a Baal Kina. So we tell the Yetzer Hara, no, that's not who we are. It's just a stumbling block. It's just a michshal. Rebbetzin Fuchs warned me. She said, tell stories, but not the stories that everybody knows. I don't know any stories. I'm learning in the yeshiva. But I try to come up with a couple. Maybe you heard some of these. This story, I guarantee nobody ever heard before. It's not that good, but nobody ever heard that. But nobody ever heard before. I remember a few months into my tenure as rabbi in the shul in Queens. So people who have come to our shiurim, they know I like to give out photocopies. All our shiurim have my source material, and I became very well acquainted with the copy machine. And I was getting very familiar with the gadgets and the features of the copy machine. And I thought I really had it down. And then on one fateful day, the screen flashed, replace the toner. Now I had never replaced toner before. And actually, I had no idea what toner was. So I open up the bottom of the copy machine. I take out the cylinder that said toner on it. I open up the machine to put in the new toner. I read the directions. And one wrong turn later, a black cloud is emanating out of the cylinder all over the brand new carpet that they just put in honor of the new rabbi. And I'm thinking to myself, 5-6 months as a rabbi, that's not bad. Maybe I'll become an accountant or something. I don't know what to do. My mind is racing. And I remember there's an industrial vacuum cleaner in the shul kitchen. So I run to the kitchen, and the super is there, Jewish super. He says, Rabbi, what do you want? Whatever you need, I help you out. Oh, no, I don't need anything. I'm eyeing the vacuum. He's standing by the vacuum cleaner. And I said, do you mind if I just see something on the vacuum? Well, what do you need? You need the vacuum. You're talking about the vacuum in the share this week. I said, no, I just have to see something. You need me to vacuum? I vacuum for you. No, I just have to see something. I take the vacuum. I see he's following me. I run with the vacuum cleaner. He said, where are you going? I close the door. I lock the door. I put a chair by the door. Don't tell my wife I know how to vacuum. But actually, my mother-in-law is here. I have the best mother-in-law, so she's not going to tell you, right? I offer a tefillah. I say Shir Hamalos, Me'ayin Yava Yezri. I couldn't believe it. The coal mine that my office had become was as clean like the new carpet was when they put it in. It wasn't really dirty. It was just a covering. It was just superficial. It was only on the outside. The carpet wasn't black. It was just covered. When we do Aseres, when we sin, the Yetzer Hara tells us, that's who you are. That's what you've become, you disgusting being, the Yetzer Hara says. But we tell the Yetzer Hara, Ki chashalta b'aveinecha. That's not who we are. That's not who we become. It's just a covering. With a little tshuva, it will come right off. And we're going to do tshuva. We could do tshuva. Because the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to help us. I recently heard at the Levaya, there's a Talmud Chacham in Kew Garden Hills who I had the privilege to be very close with, Reb Shlomo Warman, Zecher Tzaddik Levracha. He wrote about 11 Sfarim on Sugyas and Shas. And at his Levaya, they said over in the name of the Satmar Rebbe, that we all know that the Pasuk says in Tehillim, Toshev Enosh Ad Daka Vatoimer Shuvu V'nei Adam. Toshev Enosh Ad Daka Vatoimer Shuvu B'nei Adam. Says the Satmar Rebbe. We all know God's name is Yud Kei Vav Kei. The numerical value of Yud Kei Vav Kei is 26. 26. For me, for little me, to climb up all the way to level 26, it's impossible. So you know what the Rebbeinu Shalom does on a Rosh Hashanah, on a Yom Kippur, on an Aseres Yemei Teshuva? He raises us out of the mud. Ad Daka. Dalet is 4, Chaf is 20, Aleph is 1, 25. He pulls us all the way up to the 25th level until the point where it's just in reach. And the Rebbeinu Shalom says, Shuvu b'nei Adam. Now it's easy. Now it's easy. Now all you have to do is do tshuva. The Rebbeinu Shalom pulls us out of the mud. Adaka. He raises us. He lifts us up. And he says, all you need to do is take one step. One small step. The Yetzer Hara says you can change. Amar Rabbi Akiva, Ashreichem Yisrael. Lifnei mi atem mitarim, umi mitayar eschem. Avichem sheva shemayim. Says Rabbi Akiva, there are two psukim. Shenemar, v'zarakti aleichem mayim tahirim utahartem. I'll sprinkle you with the purifying waters. Ve'oimer. Mikveh Yisrael Hashem. Says Rabbi Akiva, there are two types of tahara. The purifying waters and the water of a mikveh. And there's a fundamental difference between the purifying waters and the waters of a mikveh. You know what the difference is. Everybody knows if you go in a mikveh, if a hair is sticking out, if your pinky is sticking out, you did absolutely nothing. Unless you're 100% completely immersed in the mikveh, the tefillah is completely ineffective. But there's another kind of purity. And that's the purity of the mayim hatahirim, the water of the para aduma. The water of the paraduma, if it touches your nose, if it touches your finger, if it touches one hair on your head, you've been rendered pure. Says Rav Pam, in the name of the son of Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan Spector. The same way, there are two types of tahara, there's two types of tshuva. There's one type of tshuva where we say to the Rebbeinu Shalom, I'm going to be completely different this year. I'm complete overhaul. I'm going to correct every avera, every fault, every mum, every bad midah. I'm not going to be angry. I'm not going to be jealous. I'm not going to be patient. This and that until we become what the Rambam calls a beria chadasha, a completely new entity. That is tshuva on the level of a mikvah where you're completely immersed in the tshuva. But for many of us, this type of tshuva proves to be very difficult. But there's another form of tshuva which is also effective and also purifies us. And that is the type of tshuva on the level of the mayim hatahirim, where instead of changing your entire personality, you pick one thing. I haven't been making brachos with kavana. I'm going to pick one bracha a day to say with kavana. I get angry too much. Once a week, I'm going to write down on a piece of paper a Kabbalah for Tavshin Ayin Daled once a week. When something aggravates me, I'm not going to get upset. I'm too into Gashmias. I'm too into physicality. Once a week, I'm going to open up a Musar Sefer for 10 minutes. Am I completely transforming myself? Am I transforming myself into a new entity? No. Is it complete overhaul? No. But the same way, if someone is merely sprinkled with the mayim hatahirim, they become pure. If someone takes one concrete Kabbalah for the new year, they have completely transformed themselves. What do you mean? But I'm the same. You're the same, but you're different. And if you're different, you become tahar. Says Rabbi Akiva, when the Yetzer Hara comes to you and he says, you're not going to change, you tell him, I'm going to change one thing. And if we're able to change one thing, then Elokei Avi V'Yezri. Then the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to help us out to the next level and to the next level. So perhaps today we've journeyed through what we can call 4 steps of tshuva. Number 1, we've addressed the all-important question, Ma ani, who am I? What am I? What excites me? What makes me happy? What moves me? What do I live for? Number 2, cut the excuses, cut the terutzim, cut the rationalizations. It's my fault. It's my fault. Ein hadavar taloi elabi. It's up to me. Number 3, it's not hopeless. We could rise above Yush because it's not who we really are. It's just a covering. It's just a coat. Yush is 317. With the help of the Rebbeinu Shalom Eliezer, we rise above Yush. And finally, number 4, what are we going to do about it? Says Rav Pam. Rabbi Akiva is teaching us that if you can't make a complete overhaul, don't make a complete overhaul. Take one thing. Take 2 things. Write it down on a piece of paper. Write it down. This year, bli neder, I'm going to do something more. I'm going to do one thing better. I'm going to do 2 things better. And if you're able to do that, although you have not effectuated tshuva on the level of mikvah, you've effectuated tshuva on the level of the mayim hatahirim. And once you begin the process, there's no telling how far you can go. Aviad was an Israeli soldier involved in combat during the Yom Kippur War, together with 3 of his friends. He valiantly fought against the Egyptian tanks. They were making progress, but in 1 millisecond, a shell hit the tank. The tank went up in smoke. There were no survivors except for Aviad. The only thing was, 90% of his body was burnt off. He had no skin on his body. He was still alive miraculously. He's rushed to the hospital. The doctors and nurses tried to stabilize him. And in an emergency effort, he's transported to a hospital in Yerushalayim. Aviad's mother comes running into the room. She loses herself. His body is completely covered with bandages. He has not 1 molecule of skin on his body. He slips in and out of consciousness, but his mother went to the hospital day in and day out holding his hand. He's going to pull through. He's going to pull through. He pulls through. But he's depressed. He's despondent. He's not a human being. He has no skin. He can't even look at himself. He looks like a monster. Every day, his mother comes into the hospital thinking to herself, will she ever see her poor boy's face again? Would he ever smile again? Would he ever be happy again? Months pass, 6 months pass, a year passes, and then one day Aviad shows his mother, look, Mommy! There was a small piece of skin that had regenerated itself on his hand. Mommy, I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better. Tears streamed down his face. For the first time in a year, Aviad knew that one day he would look himself again. As we try to correct ourselves in one small way, in one small measure, we don't know where it will lead us. We don't know where it will take us. But like, hey, Avi Biezri, if we could make one genuine, small change, the Rebbeinu Shalom will give us siyata d'shmaya. He'll lead us all the way back home to Teshuva Shlema. Please accept my sincere brachas for a year of good health, parnasa b'revach, nachas from our children. V'yimalei Hashem kol mishal aseinu l'toiva, g'mar chasima toiva.